If you're a podcaster struggling with promotion, audience engagement, and lead generation, this video is for you. Imagine turning every podcast episode into a high traffic blog post, social media content, and even automated DMs to grow your listeners, all on autopilot.
I'm an all-stack developer with 15 years of experience and work with technologies like Ruby on Rails, Java, Node.js, and AWS. Also work with global giants like Prudential. Scaled backend systems for unicorn startup Ola Electric for the e-scooter launch, and even co-founded a UK-based startup as a CTO. But there's an elephant I could not ignore in the technology world: AI. And I've completely pivoted my career into it. I'm doing it in public, building, experimenting, and sharing everything along the way. If you want to stay ahead and learn to build some AI workflows that can save you time, scale your businesses effortlessly, and also make you some money, then let's dive in.
This is our n8n workflow for podcast automation. This workflow will be triggered by clicking on this test workflow button, which is here at the bottom, test workflow. The very first node that will get triggered is the YouTube node. Let's see how this YouTube node is set up. I'm double clicking on the YouTube node to open it. After opening it, the very first thing is credential. Here you can select your credential, or if you don't have any credential, click on create new credential. Now this dialog will open. Now let me show you where we can find these values to enter it. To find the credential values for your n8n YouTube node, log into Google Cloud Console, console.cloud.google.com. After you log into your console, you'll see this screen. Now from here we can enable many Google APIs and services. For example, YouTube. From the quick access section, click on APIs and services. On this screen, click on enable APIs and services. In the search box, type YouTube. Now select YouTube Data API. From the search result, select on YouTube Data API. Under this section, you will see a button for enabling it. Click on enable. After you do that, click on back. And from the top here, click on API and services. You should see YouTube Data API version 3 listed under your list of APIs. Open your left side navigation and click on credentials. Here click on create credentials, OAuth client ID. Select application type as web application. Enter the name for your application. Ignore authorized JavaScript origins. For authorized redirect URIs, come back to your n8n and click on this OAuth redirect URL. That will copy the URL to your clipboard. Click on add URI in your Google Cloud Console and paste. Then after you click create, your credential will be created. I have my credential here. I'll click on it. And on the right side, you'll see additional information where you'll have client ID and client secrets. And you can copy both one by one, client ID and paste here, and client secret and paste it here. That's it. You'll have your n8n YouTube credential connected. Next setting that we are going to change in our YouTube node is channel ID. Enter the ID for your YouTube channel for which you want to get the data. Now let's test our n8n node. We'll click on test step, and if everything is set up correctly, especially your credentials and the channel ID, you should see the YouTube data for your channel appear here. And that's it. Our YouTube node is set up. So we'll close it now. The output data for the YouTube node is an array. To handle each item in the array, I have added a loop over items node. Inside the loop over items node, on the left side, you can see as an input, which is our YouTube data, which is an array of 2 objects. I've set the batch size 1 to process through each item one after another. The loop over node has 2 branches, loop and done. The loop branch will process each entry within the array, and the done branch will be triggered once all the items in the array are processed. The first node inside our loop for items to be processed is a Google Sheet node, where I'm checking for a certain condition. Let me walk you through the setup. Starting from the credential, click on this drop down and select your credential, or click on create new credential. In my previous video, I have shown you how to create the credential using Google Sign-in. In this video, I'll show you how to create credential using OAuth 2. Come back to your Google Cloud Console. On the left side navigation, click on Enable APIs and Services. Then click on Enable APIs and Services. On the search box, click on Google Sheet. Select Google Sheets API. From this result, select Google Sheets API. In this section, you'll have a button to enable this. Click on Enable. Then click back. And again, click on this hamburger and click on API and Services. You'll have your Google Sheets API listed here. For the credentials, go to your left-hand navigation and click on Credentials. If you already have a OAuth 2 client ID credential, you can simply click on it. And on the right side, you'll have both client ID and client secret, which you can copy each from here to your n8n client ID and client secret. And don't forget to copy this OAuth redirect URL and paste it into your authorized redirect URIs and click on Save. If you don't have OAuth 2 client IDs created, click on Create Credentials and select OAuth client ID. And then the process is similar as for YouTube node. With this, your Google Sheets credential will be connected and you can select it here. Now before moving ahead, we must have a Google Sheet document already created to save our data, which I have already done. Under the document section, when we click on this drop down, we'll get the list of our Google Sheet documents. Select the Google Sheet document where you want to save your data. And then next you can select your sheet from within that document. For my case, I have created a Google Sheet document YouTube videos. It has 3 columns with headers, title, ID, processed. In my condition, I'm going to use ID, which will be the video ID from my YouTube node, and processed value as 1. You can add these filters from clicking on this button, Add Filter, and select the column. Keep the combined filters for AND because we want both ID and processed values to be filtered. And this Google Sheet node is set up and ready to process our items. Now I'm going to explain you how I have set up the processing for each item. First, I have these 3 nodes which are working as a filter to stop from processing one entry more than once. In the Google Sheets node, we have to make sure under the settings, we have always output data as enabled. I will show what that does in a minute. To show it, I have to make sure that my YouTube videos Google Sheet document is completely empty. And I'm clicking on Test Workflow. When I open my Google Sheets node, you see it is processing a video from my YouTube channel. And due to the condition here, because my Google Sheet was empty, there was no video with this ID with processed value 1. So the output for this node is empty. And if I did not have this option enabled, the workflow would have terminated. To avoid that, we need to have this option enabled, and so that we get some data as output from this node. Now next in this chain, I have another node which is summarize. I'm running an aggregation over the count for the field row number. Currently this count is coming as 0. So the next node in this chain is if node. I'm checking the condition if count row number value is greater than 0, which is false in this case. If you can look here closely, this if node has 2 branches, true and false. If it is false, my execution is going over to the next node, which is a AWS Lambda node. But if it is true, it is going to loop over to the next item in the array. The next node in our loop for the false branch of if node is our Lambda function. Now let me show you how it is set up. Starting from the credentials. In the credentials to connect with, if you click on this drop down, you can select your AWS credential or you can click on create new credential. If you click on create new credential, you'll get this kind of a dialog where you have to select your region, your access key ID and your secret access key. Let me show you how you can get it. First, you have to go to your AWS console and go to the Lambda section. Here, if you can find your Lambda function listed, Then on top right, just before your username, is a drop down where it says for me United States, North Virginia. If I click on this drop down, I can see all the AWS supported regions. If you don't find your Lambda function within this region, you can change your region to the one that has your Lambda function. In my case, it is the same. So the region for my Lambda function will be US East, North Virginia, US East 1. If it's a different region for you, you can change it here. Now for access key ID and secret, you need to come to IAM section of AWS console panel. Here, click on the users on the left navigation. Then click on create user. Give your user a name. And then click on next. On the set permissions screen, you can select the last option, attach policies directly. In the permissions policies search, select for Lambda. Here, select AWS Lambda full access. And scroll down and click on next. Now we have a user n8n test which has permission AWS Lambda full access. Now click on create user. After your user is created, you can see it listed under your users. Click on your newly created user and come to the security credentials section. Under this section, come down to access keys. Click on create access key. For the use cases, select the other option and click on next. Description is optional. Click on create access key. When you create an access key, you will have an option to download the access key. So download the CSV file for your access key. From within your CSV file of your access key, you'll have both your access key ID and secret. Paste your access key ID in this section and access key secret in this section. And click on save. Your AWS account will be connected with n8n. Now we'll select the invoke operation. And for the function name dropdown, if you still see some error here, that means there is something wrong with your credential. So double check your credentials. Once you open this dropdown, you would see all your Lambda functions for the region you have selected. My Lambda function is n8n test1, so I'll select that. For invocation type, select wait for results. And then in the input, my Lambda function takes 3 keys, key 1, key 2, and key 3. For key 1, I'll select from the input loop over items and the video ID of my YouTube video. For key 2, I'll select the title of my YouTube video. After setting up the input for your Lambda function, we can click on test step. If we get the correct result back from our Lambda function, in this case, the video with ID is processed, that means our Lambda function is working. And with that, our n8n AWS Lambda node is connected. The last node in our workflow is a Google Sheet node. Let me open it to show you how I have set it up. Starting from the credentials, click on the drop down to select your Google Sheet account. If you don't have it, you can click on create new credential. And I have already given the walkthrough of it in my previous Google Sheet node. Now from the operation, we'll select on append row. In the document section, we'll select the same Google Sheet document that we selected earlier. In my case, it is YouTube videos. Select your sheet from within the document. And for the mapping column mode, select map each column manually. Now each column header from my sheet will appear here, ID, title, and processed. For these, I'm taking the values from loop over items node. The ID is my video ID. The title is the title. And processed value is 1. And that's it. Once we set it up, for every video that will go through this iteration of the loop, will get saved in our Google Sheets. With this, we have our n8n workflow fully prepared. Now let me run through it to show you how it's working. For that, first I'll go to my Google Sheet and clear all the previous data. And also, don't forget to save your workflow and then click on refresh. After we refresh, we are starting from completely scratch. Now I'm clicking on test workflow to start my workflow. As you can see, each node is getting executed, and with loop over items, there are multiple executions happening. So my execution has been successfully completed. Now let's head back to our Google Sheet to see what is there. As we can see, we have 2 rows appended for each video from my YouTube channel. And also one more thing to notice, we have only triggered the false branch from the if node for our loop. The true branch, which is represented in white, has never been executed. It is because based on the if condition in my node, the count of row number was always 0, as there was no row with any of the existing video ID from my YouTube channel. But to test it one more time, I'm going to click on test workflow. This time you can see the true branch has executed again 2 times, and the false branch has never got executed, which is shown in the white here. That is because this time the if node was returning true for my condition of count row number. There were already existing rows in my Google Sheet with the videos ID from my YouTube channel. So my if condition returned greater than 0. And also we can see there are no additional rows have been appended in my Google Sheet. And that means we are not processing any video more than once. And with that, our entire n8n workflow for the YouTube automation is completed.
So you have just seen how this n8n workflow automates your entire podcast marketing process, from fetching episodes to processing each one effortlessly. But here's the thing, the true powerhouse of this automation is actually inside the AWS Lambda. And not just one. Imagine connecting multiple Lambda nodes to take this workflow to an entirely new level and make it truly your own. Here's what AWS Lambda can unlock. Convert transcripts into SEO-optimized blog posts and auto-publish or save them as drafts. Generate platform-specific social media posts, schedule them instantly. Create and send personalized newsletters, emails, and DMs to engage your audience. Go beyond, auto-generate YouTube shorts, audiograms, and AI-powered summaries. The possibilities are endless, and in my next advanced tutorial, I'll break down exactly how to build and customize the AWS Lambda. If you found this valuable and want more deep dive automation content, hit that subscribe button and follow me on LinkedIn. I share exclusive automation insights there. And now I would love to hear from you. What's the next workflow you would like me to build?